Hi there, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and my project today is for Elizabeth Craft Design's Designer's Coloring Challenge, the theme of fabulous florals, and that's my project. But I wanted to mention there is a giveaway with this blog post of these fabulous products, and all you need to do is leave a comment on the Elizabeth Craft Designs blog by Friday, March 24th, telling them what is your favorite springtime flower, and I will have a link to that in the video description below, along with a link to the supply list. So to start off with, I am using my Distress Oxides. I wanted to try something a little different for my coloring technique today. So I am squishing the ink directly onto my craft sheet, that is Wilted Violet, Broken China, and Faded Jeans. And then I'm just smushing my pieces of watercolor paper into the ink. And this gets a pretty cool, very colorful background effect. And I learned that, the first time you're kind of squishing them in there, you're going to get larger swashes of ink across the paper. And then as the paper dries, you can pick up more of like a dotted effect. So you can see how the ink is sort of forming its own like dots on the craft mat as I spray it with water and as I pick it up with the paper. And so once your paper if you dry it in between, you can pick up those dots pretty easily, and even just if you set it aside and let it dry for a little while, you can pick up the dots, and it creates a really cool effect. And these inks are not translucent, they're basically opaque, so you can layer on top of them and they don't mess up the color underneath. They just layer and layer and layer. And so I did about 3 or 4 versions of like doing it over and over again to just layer onto each piece till I got the effect that I liked in the end. And then I will skip ahead to where I'm adding some fossilized amber on top of all my layers of blues and purples. I picked fossilized amber because it's a yellow, and yellow is the complement of violet, so I thought that could be kind of cool, and it actually created a very fun effect. It's not a super bright yellow once it dries, but it does add kind of a warm dimension to all the layers and all the different colors on each piece. So I really like that about it. And there you can see all the kind of dots that I was getting with some of the later layers with the oxides. They are very cool and really fun to play with. And you can see how each one is different, yet each one is pretty fun. So I decided to use this one to stamp my flower on top of. So I'm using the Flower Power stamp, and I am stamping this on top of the Distress Oxides using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I'm going to sprinkle that with black embossing powder to heat emboss the image on top of the Distress Oxides. And that gives it a nice, like, kind of glossy flower. And I will eventually die cut this out using the matching dye from the Flower Power die set. Now I do color the center with a little bit of fossilized amber, but I will change that later, so it'll become a glitter dot in the end. For my leaves, I did the exact same thing that I did with the flower. So I took a couple pieces of watercolor paper and I squished it into the ink. So I just used different color inks. So for my inks, I used cracked pistachio, peeled paint, and iced spruce, and then a little bit of broken china there to get like just a funky greeny blue collagey background that you see there. And then I decided I wanted to add a little brown. So I grabbed the vintage photo and spritzed that with some water and then dabbed my sheets into that. And it was a very cool effect. The brown looks really super dark when it's wet, but once you dry it, the oxidation starts to happen. And so instead of being like super dark brown, it lightens up quite a bit and it gets more of like a haze to it, like a white gray haze. And you can see there as I'm drying it that it fades back and sort of melds in with the other colors and creates this really cool sort of, depth of color. Now I wanted a little extra green, so I grabbed my Distress ink actually and peeled paint, and I stuck my papers into that just to get some funky sort of translucent-y green dots and dribbles on my sheets, and that added a nice little extra effect there at the end. So you can layer your inks over your oxides. And these are all of my pieces ready to go together. I cut the green leaves out using the poinsettia die. It's the Els Vandenberg poinsettia die, using the flower piece. And that's a cool thing about that die set, is that you can use it to make leaves, you can use it to make the petals, you can use it for both. So I was making leaves out of this one. My card base is a piece of 5" by 10" 100-pound white soft finish cardstock that I folded in half to create a 5 by 5" card base. This pattern green paper I cut using the second largest die in the Fitted Squares die set. And then this is a piece of Time for Teal soft finish cardstock that I cut with the third largest dotted scallop square die. And then my last piece is some 85-pound white soft finish cardstock that I cut out using the fourth largest die in the Fitted Squares die set. And that's the fun thing about both of those die sets. They work together, they're designed to do that, and they create a really fun layered up set in the end. Now I'm cutting apart those poinsettias, I guess, and to stick my leaves under my flower, and I purposely was picking the leaves that had a little bit of peeled paint color on them. Peeled paint is the kind of yellowy green color in the Distress Oxides, and that went nicely with my pattern paper. So I wanted each leaf to have a little bit of that color on it. And then you can see my greeting is from the Dream Sentiments stamp set that I stamped also in VersaFine Onyx Black. And then I'm adding just a really sketchy black vein to each leaf with my micron pen to pull in the black from the flower and the greeting. And I adhered the leaves onto the back of the flower with some double-sided adhesive tape, and then I added foam tape on the back to pop the whole thing up. And that is a piece of Soft Sky soft finish cardstock that I'm using across the corner with the sentiment on top. And of course, because, you know, I can't make a card without something glittery or sparkly, I had to grab my glitter dots and my favorite tweezers and scatter some of the various sizes of the glitter dots around the flower sort of randomly to create some visual interest. I love those glitter dots because they kind of look like sequins, but they're actually stickers, and then they come in all different sizes, and even though it looks like I'm using a lot, I like maybe used, I don't know, half a row of one row on that ginormous sheet of glitter dots. So they're really fun. And then I added the glitter dot to the center to kind of pull the whole thing together and make the glitter dots make sense. And finally, for a little bit added dimension, I rolled my leaves around the bottom of a paintbrush and a few of the flower petals just to give it a little bit of extra flair and dimension. And then that is the completed project. So definitely a little different for me, not my normal way of coloring flowers per se, but I thought it was really fun to show how you could use the Distress Oxides along with the stamps and the dies to create a really fun and interesting focal point on a card. So I hope it gave you a little inspiration today. Thanks so much for watching. I always appreciate it. As normal, there is a supply list linked in the video description below and over on my blog. If you liked the video, I'd love it if you gave me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would love it even more if you'd subscribe. Here are a couple more projects I have done for Elizabeth Craft Designs coloring challenges in the past couple months. So you can click on either one of those if you're interested. I always appreciate you taking the time to watch, so thank you so much. Leave me a comment, because I always love to hear from you guys. So question, comment, anything. Thanks so much. Have a great day.